All right, everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating and honestly a kind of startling essay that was written about a century ago. We're going to unpack the philosopher George Santayana's incredibly powerful critique of the whole idea of liberalism. So, Santayana kicks things off with this absolute gem of an observation about people. And this tension, he points out, that pull between our desire to be an individual and our deep, deep need to fit in, that's really the key to his entire argument. It's the perfect place for us to start. So, to really get our heads around Santayana's powerful critique, here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at what he saw as liberalism's core promise. Then, we'll dig into its central, kind of biting paradox. And finally, we'll get to his pretty shocking prediction for where it all ends up. Okay, let's dive right in. First things first, what did Santayana even mean when he used the word liberalism? Well, for him, it was this radical break from everything that came before it, a totally new way of thinking about society and about us as individuals. You see, he saw liberalism as a direct reaction against those old, super rigid systems. And while the first reformers might have just wanted to swap one set of compulsory beliefs for another, what they actually did, maybe by accident, was unleash the modern idea of liberty itself, the freedom from being told what to do and what to think. And this, right here, this boils down the whole ideal of liberalism perfectly. The goal, as Santayana saw it, was to strip the law down to just a few negative rules. Basically, don't harm other people, and then just leave everyone alone, completely free to chase their own version of a good life. Okay, so that's the beautiful ideal of pure individual freedom. But here's the crucial point. It immediately slams right into a wall. And that wall is, well, it's us. It's human nature. First, let's just take a second to appreciate the promise on the table here. I mean, this is the whole huge appeal of liberalism, right? It offers comfort, it offers relief, and it offers an escape from what Santayana called accidental tyrannies. Like, being born into a life or a system that just doesn't fit who you are. And this just brilliantly illustrates the paradox. Because the very second you get rid of official, top-down government control, 1,000 unofficial controls just rush in to fill that space. Things like fashion, social pressure, private clubs, propaganda. He argues that these things can actually be way harder to escape than any law. I just love this line. Santayana uses this really witty comparison to show that even our most important choices, from who runs the country to who we spend our life with, are often just an illusion of freedom. The menu of options is already picked out for us by the world around us, and that drastically limits the liberty we think we have. Now let's look at how this paradox actually leads to two very, very different outcomes in a liberal society. Santayana really praises one of them as a fantastic achievement, but he sees the other one as this dangerous, self-defeating impulse. So this is the big positive result, culture. And for Santayana, culture isn't about, being stuffy or going to the opera. It's this profound ability that a free person has to stand apart from their own society, to understand and even judge different ways of life from an outside perspective. It's a huge intellectual win. And here's the twist. Because liberalism isn't just about being left alone, it's also completely obsessed with the idea of progress. But this isn't just any old change. Oh no, it's change in a very specific, prescribed direction. The direction that the reformer thinks is best for everybody. Santayana uses this really simple story to make such a powerful point. You have this philanthropist, right, acting in the name of progress, who just can't leave the little boy alone to be happy in his own way playing in the mud. He feels this compulsion to step in and help the boy towards his idea of happiness, totally abandoning that core liberal principle of let me alone. And this quote just nails the critique. The liberal reformer, in all their enthusiasm to help, becomes what Santayana calls a higher snob. They become convinced that their way of life is the only one anyone could ever truly want. They stop wanting freedom for other people and start wanting to make other people like them. So the big question is, where does all this lead? Well, this deep internal contradiction, this battle between leaving people alone and forcing them to progress, it leads Santayana to a really dark and deeply ironic prophecy about where liberalism is ultimately headed. And this is the end game. By getting rid of a central, compulsory authority and championing individual freedom, liberalism doesn't actually create lasting peace. Nope. Instead, it creates an open arena, a kind of battleground, where every competing interest and ideology can fight it out for total domination. And this just lays out Santayana's predicted timeline so clearly. First, you get the open field. Then, a war of propaganda, where the most ruthless and psychologically clever groups win. And in the end, one zealous, completely illiberal group will win the whole fight and impose its own orthodoxy, using the very freedom that liberalism gave them to destroy it. And his conclusion is just, wow, it's grim. The winner will make an end of liberalism, but they won't end the struggle. A new order will be built, and in the next generation, it will have to fight off a whole new crop of rebels, starting the entire cycle all over again. So I'll just leave you all with this question to chew on. Santayana wrote this 100 years ago. When you think about our world today with social media, nonstop propaganda, and all these intense social pressures, do you think his warning about freedom's great irony still rings true? It's definitely something to think about.